It's district time for the Graham Steers, and the state of Texas. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Graham Steer Football Show, right here on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media. As the Steers come off the bye week, feeling pretty good about themselves, I would think. 4-1. Basically, only given up, 14 points out of one game, that Springtown game, which, again, a loss, but you kind of feel like maybe that was a needed thing. In a weird way. Sometimes that's how that works in non-district. Since then, Graham has been playing some darn good football against some really solid teams, and now we start district play this week. It'll be Burke-Burnett. The Bulldogs come in on this season 1-4 so far. They've just really struggled to, once a bad thing happens in the game, to figure out how to get over it, to move on. That Jacksboro game, man, that was ugly. But they moved the ball well at times, but then it was turnovers. It was pick sixes. It was once a bad thing happens, it all falls apart. And so for Graham this week, they need to jump out quick and take any hope away from a Burke-Burnett team that, hey, they're going to be talking all week long and in the locker room before the game. Hey, it's the first district game. Everybody's 0-0. All goals are still attainable. And that's why I always say this, and I say it to Coach. Week one of district is always a weird week, weird scores, games that shouldn't be close or close, upsets happen. And for Graham to keep going, they just need to take care of business. As always, we'll be talking to the head coach of the Graham Steers. That's, of course, Coach Clay McChristian. And we'll do it all when we come back right here on the Graham Steer Football Show, brought to you by the Athletic Booster Club. Do you have a kid that plays sports? Are you yourself a weekend warrior? Then I'm going to tell you something. Check out NeuroGuardPlus.com. That's NEURO GuardPlus.com. It's a mouthpiece that can not only help with concussions, but can dramatically affect the way you perform. And the mission of NeuroGuard is to, of course, reduce the risk of suffering a concussion when participating in any contact sport, military, anything that you're doing physical that you could take a blow to the head. You might want to put in a NeuroGuard mouth guard. And as I said, it not only helps eliminate concussions, it helps you perform better by simply aligning your jaw properly. And that sounds like such a simple thing, but it is so important because it allows oxygen to get to your brain. And when you get oxygen to the brain, you don't have that fog of sports or that fog of war where you get confused. And if you've ever played football, that's a sport where that can happen. Especially, man, you're in there in the trenches and you take a shot to the side and all of a sudden things are spinning. This mouth guard will help you keep focus by, again, simply keeping oxygen going to your brain 100%. Again, check them out, NeuroGuardPlus.com. And if you play sports, if you have a kid that plays sport, if you do something physical, one of the things that Dr. Hutchinson, the creator of this, was talking about was some people will use it when they're doing yard work and when they're mowing and things like that, where they're being physically active because they know it helps align their jaw and it keeps oxygen going to the brain, which also helps your lungs, by the way, when you can have full breath every time as you're performing. So again, check them out, NeuroGuardPlus.com.
Hi, I'm Josh Bell with the Miami Marlins. I wear NeuroGuard to help with strength and coordination when I'm in the weight room and help with balance when I'm on the baseball.
Terry Bennett back here on the Graham Football Show, now joined by the head coach of the Steers, Coach Clay McChristian. And, Coach, it starts this week, District 3 4A Division II play. Before we talk about your matchup, just tell me, how much have y'all started looking into the district teams and watching their film, or do y'all just do this week by week as far as prep for teams?
It's a little bit of both. I can't lie. I take a peek at everybody because we have a pool of film, and so I just take a look at each one. I just want to get a glimpse of kind of what everybody has, just personnel-wise, not scheme, nothing, just seeing personnel. But the other 98% of the time, I'm focusing on 1 week at a time. I try and tell our kids to not look ahead, and so as coaches, we make sure we try and do the exact same thing, and we focus all our vision right now on one team, and that's Burke-Burnett.
Well, you bring up a good point. You mentioned that y'all have a pool of film. It's so much different now than it, of course, than it was 20 years ago, but it's even different now than it was 10 years ago. Kind of explain the process of how y'all get film in 2024.
Well, it has changed so much. Back when I first started, we were exchanging VHS tapes, at an Allsups on Saturday morning. And so We've gone from that to then we went to where we were exchanging hard drives. And then now everybody's in a huddle. And so even with huddle, it used to be back a few years ago where you just exchanged, week of, kind of like we do in non-district, you exchange games on Wednesday of the next opponent. But then once you get in a district, most districts now have gone to a pool play of where everybody dumps all their film into one pool. And once you dump your film in, you have access to everybody else's. And so, yeah, for some schools, they may want to start, game planning weeks in advance. Schools like us, well, we're just going to focus 1 week at a time. It's what we do, but it doesn't mean anything's wrong or right. It's just what we do.
And it's a lot different now. You don't get that game film and realize that, they accidentally didn't give you any of the offensive side, or they accidentally didn't show you any of the defensive side like some of the old stories used to be.
It used to be funny, when you exchange a VHS tape and it all subs, you'd get that VHS and you'd go back and you pop it in there and it was reruns of I Love Lucy on there. And you're like, what is this? And you'd call the coach up and he's like, I'm sorry. It was laying on my table. I guess my wife's VHS tape was sitting there. And so you have to send another coach back. And so, yeah, it's a different time and place, but thank goodness for huddle film right now. It's awesome.
All right, let's start talking about your opponent this week. You take on a Burke Burnett Bulldog team that's 1-4, but they've been in a couple of games where if a possession goes right or wrong, they might have been able to make it closer. When you look at the film, what do you think of the Bulldogs?
They're really good up front. Going into the season, you look at all the previews on every team, and you look at Burke Burnett, and all they talked about was their offensive line. So that was going to be a strength coming back. They had a lot of returners, and I can see exactly what they were talking about. They've got a pretty solid offensive line. Schematically, I really like what their coaches are trying to do. They're trying to get their kids in the right positions and give them an advantage. So I think they're well coached. And anytime you've got a good offensive line up front, it's always a little bit scary that you've got to do things right or they'll take advantage of you. So they're solid there, skill wise. They got a couple of pretty good receivers outside that are pretty good on 50-50 balls. And so if you get a jump ball with them, they have a tendency to come down with them.
This is one of those programs that just feels like they can never quite find that consistency of first off, they play a pretty good, tough non-district schedule. But inside those games, some of the things I saw watching a little bit of the Iowa Park game and I watched a little bit of the Holiday game, they'll be doing good and then they'll get off schedule and it just feels like they can't ever get that back again.
It is. It really happened to them this past week or 2 weeks ago when they played Jacksboro, and everybody looks at that score, 70-2. What you look at that, though, is that they were moving the ball against Jacksboro, but just like you just said, they throw an interception. I think they had they threw 2 or 3 pick sixes on that one, but it's kind of like they can't get out of their own way at some point. But just like every other school out there is, they've been on an open week as well, and so you've got that extra week to kind of clean up things, realize what you do good, and throw out the things you do bad, and so. I expect that we'll see a much improved Burke team tomorrow night.
Well, and, coming off the bye week, and this as a guy that's been doing this for a long time, that first week of district, Coach Williams is telling that staff over there and telling their players, hey, we're 0-0 this week. We pull off the upset. We're right back where we want to be. And I've always said your 2 weirdest weeks of the season are week 1 and then week 1 of district. Weird games happen in that first week of district.
You're exactly right. It's a complete change of mindset, and whether you're 5-0 or 0-5 on those first 5 games, that second part of the season, it's a time to have a short memory and realize that all your goals are still ahead of you. And so if you can really get your kids to buy into that mindset of understanding that you go out there and knock off a team that's supposed to beat you, but you go out there and they slop around and you keep that game close in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, then anything can happen. So we've got to make sure that we have our kids, honed in. And I've really been really proud of our kids during open week. Man, they were focused in. Nobody's talking about, Burke and all this stuff. We just really focused on ourselves and getting ourselves better. And then really these 3 days of practice we've had this week are our best 3 this season. I mean, that's from 2 days to any one of these first 5 weeks. We've had 3 outstanding days of practice this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing all that kind of come together.
Here at L4 Media, we talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. And you can see it all on our YouTube channel at L4 Media Company. Like and subscribe. As always, we want to thank Coach for joining us. District play begins, and this is going to be such a fun district when you look at 3-4A Division II so far this year. Of course, you've got Graham 4-0. You've got new 4A Division II team Brock 5-0. By the way, we have a Brock Eagle coaches show here on the network. If you'd like to check out the quote-unquote enemy, you can hear that. It's here on S2SSports.com. We also have a Mineral Wells football show, and Mineral Wells is very, very much improved in year 2 of the Cody Worrell regime there. You know, last year they started out strong and faded. This year they're 4-1. Lost to Godly right before the bye week, but they start district play with Bridgeport. And when you look at the teams, I mean, to me, it's going to be, you know, Brock, Graham, Eagle Mountain, Mineral Wells, and Bridgeport all playing for a playoff spot. You know, Eagle Mountain coach Jeremy Mullins from Toller, he's really getting that program feel like they're rounding in the form, and they're going to be good next year, especially. Like, they're going to be really good next year, and I think they could be really good by the end of this season. So 3-4A Division II play, man, it's going to be you're gonna have at least, in my opinion, 3 games in this district that are going to be games that, you know, you're going to go in the third and fourth quarter not knowing who's going to win. And it's going to be a fun race this year in 3-4A Division II. And it'll be interesting to see, because I think there's also chances that some of these teams will play each other again in the playoffs. Any questions, thoughts, or comments, just email me, Terry at S2SSport.com, whether it be for the coach, whether it be for me, whether it be for sideline to sideline. And I apologize. You're hearing my mic arm. Last night during Sideline to Sideline, we do a 4A, 3A, and 2A show. You can hear that at S2SGrantandTerry.com or watch the YouTube video at L4 Media Company. But my mic arm started messing up, and you can kind of hear me moving it right now, so I do apologize for that. But that doesn't matter. What matters now is district play begins, and we'll talk about the results from this week, and we'll talk about next week on the Graham Steer Football Show on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media.